Honorable Men Discord, Deranged Mortician. Let's talk about it. First, I'd like to say, in this amazing world that we live in, there's a lot of jobs that are out there that I think are underappreciated. There's a lot of jobs out there that not everyone is capable of doing. Excuse me. And being a mortician to me is one of those jobs that is underappreciated, in my opinion, and it's not something that everyone is built for. And I know this for a fact because in my line of work, I oftentimes have to deal with the deceased. Now, I don't deal with the deceased on the level of a mortician. I'm not an embalmer, but I do, in fact, deal with the deceased. And it's funny, when I was younger, I used to be afraid to even be near a dead body. But then as I grew older, I found myself doing different jobs, and those jobs put me with the deceased. This particular story is about a mortician and what she chose to do to a deceased body. But before we get to that, again, I just want to acknowledge morticians for the work that they do, because at the end of the day, they have to fix up bodies to make it presentable for families to have that last viewing of their loved ones. Excuse me. And interestingly enough, I had recently spoke to a mortician who, I was just curious. I was just asking him, like, what do you do when, bodies aren't in the condition to be viewed? If they had holes from, like, maybe the gunshot victims. And he told me they use wax. And I don't know if this information even matters to most of you that's watching, but I just found that to be curious. I was like, oh, that's what they do? So basically they fill the holes in the body with wax. And then they, of course, use makeup, for those of you that are unaware of the fact that they put makeup on the deceased bodies. Excuse me, I really have a bad cough. But with that being said, morticians, they do a job that not everybody's willing to do, because I have colleagues that don't want to be anywhere near the body, and they don't have to be. If they're uncomfortable with the bodies, then employees like myself will deal with the bodies if need be. But this story is about a mortician who took advantage of her profession and made it personal. So the gentleman who was deceased that she was working on was a known registered sex offender. And she took it upon herself to cut off his genitals and shove it in his mouth. Yes, you heard me correctly, but I'll say it again. This particular mortician, which is why the title is Deranged Mortician, she cut the gentleman's genitalia and shoved it in his mouth. But don't take my word for it. We're going to go straight to Fox 26 Houston, who covered the report. So take a listen.
First up on the Factor Uncensored tonight, a shocking report involving cutting off the penis of a dead man in Houston. According to the Harris County Precinct 1 Constable's office, a woman who worked at a funeral home cut the penis off a dead registered sex offender's body and stuffed it into his mouth. Amber Laudermilk was arraigned for the crime this morning. Our photographer, Tori Walker, was the only photojournalist to capture the appearance in court. Investigators say this happened at Memorial Mortuary and Crematory in February. Laudermilk was in the process of cremating Charles Rodriguez in front of another employee and embalming student as well. According to the court documents, she told the two not to say anything. Investigators say they initially were afraid to speak up, Rodriguez died in January. He has been reported as a sex offender since 2002. As for Laudermilk, her embalmment's license is under review to be permanently revoked. She could receive up to $10,000 fine, between 6 months to 2 years in jail. Joining us to talk about it, Andy Kahn of Houston Crime Stoppers and Human Trafficking Specialty, Matilda Saragosa. So first of all, your thoughts are
Before they continue to speak. Now, it's been a known fact that sex offenders that go to prison are oftentimes dealt with by the inmates. It's almost like street justice. I don't know what to say or think of this. For any of you that feel like this is justified and it's one and the same, if you feel like it's similar to what takes place in prison, by all means, let me know in the comments. You know, when I first heard the story, I thought it was bizarre. I think she's deranged. I think she definitely needs therapy. Aside from that, I don't know if she may have been a victim in the past. And so when she found out the information on the body that she was working on, she just lost it and then blacked out and did what she did. But very strange ordeal. But let's continue.
this. You know, you can laugh and joke about this, but this is a serious case.
Absolutely. I think it's highly concerning. You have somebody who's absolutely disgruntled, angry, possible mental health, and of course, took matters into her own hands to do what she decided to do. Maybe some unresolved issues in there, thrown in there. I mean, I just don't know to the extent of how much information she's able to receive on this person, if she's able to know as much as I would think she knew in order to do this. Did something happen to her before, and she felt like, I'm going to take it out on this person now because of his past crimes. But ultimately, that was somebody's son, that was somebody's father, and he still deserved his dignity.
And clearly, Andy, we don't know the circumstances and her motivation for doing this. But is this something that maybe crime victims have in their minds? You know, finally to get real justice in their minds in a situation like this.
It's fantasy land. You hear it all the time. I'm going to jump over the rail and I'm going to get that person that did this to my daughter, my son. You hear that all the time. But, you know, that's a movie. Real life, it doesn't happen. This is actually, Isaiah, the second time in about a year that we've had an incident involving a registered sex offender. The first one, we had a guy that pretended to be part of a chat group, and he was talking to a registered sex offender. He met and he shot and killed him. He's charged with murder. That was the first one. Now you've got this really bizarro.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you'd be reading a headline like that? Seriously?
I absolutely did not.
No, that's not something you think. And for this person to do that in the open, not even secretive, you know, made a veiled attempt to hide what she was doing. I mean, that's extremely disturbing.
Absolutely.
And is this the type of situation that would trigger, whether or not they act on it or not, it could trigger something in people who may have been victims, or a person who may have had a child or family member that may have been victimized, and that's to both of you.
Right, I think that absolutely. At some point, if you were on the other end of the spectrum and something had happened and that was the person who had done it, then of course you're thinking like, okay, this is what he deserves in the back of your mind. But in reality, that's just like he's talking about. That's not something you would want to do, and you would want to do it not in public. And she openly did this and, you know, has no remorse of it.
No, in her career.
Not to condone what she did, I just have to say this. I spoke to a funeral director who told me, we were just talking about the business of, you know, just burying someone, between the cost of buying a plaque, between the caskets, having the service at the chapels, the viewing, the wakes, of course, renting the hearse, and so on and so forth. And he told me, he's like, you know, it's such a waste of money. He's like, if people only knew how they butchered the bodies, and I know what he was talking about. He was talking about autopsies and how they cut the chest open. Sometimes they cut the top of the head open. And I don't mean to make this, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't mean to paint the picture so that I'm just making people feel sick to their stomach. But I'm saying this to say, when a person passes away, depending on the condition, especially if it was a situation that stemmed from a murder, they really, for lack of a better word, tear open the body. So, with that being said, it's not that for a person that doesn't do this line of work, that's not a mortician, you would say, man, how is someone able to do something like that? But they do so much far more damage to the body itself that something like this is not beyond her capabilities. It's just a matter of the fact that she did what she did, and it wasn't part of an investigation or to see why the person passed. It was just I guess, to get some type of revenge for the acts that he did whilst he was alive. But I don't know, again, for those of you that are watching this, do you feel like it's one and the same as far as the street justice that takes place in prison? Or do you feel like it was just unnecessary destruction to the remains of that person that she basically violated in death? But let's continue.
Is over and done with, no matter what. When you look up the name of Amber Loudermilk, you're always going to be associated with this offense, which has now gone viral as well. And I don't care whether, the individual who's, let them die with dignity at the very least. To abuse a corpse like that and then to actually do the things that she did, putting genitalia in his mouth and things of that nature, that's some twisted stuff.
And of course, she's accused. So
Again, I say, when the gentleman said to abuse a corpse, well, fortunately for many of us, we don't get to see the process that's done behind the scenes that a mortician does. But if you are an organ donor, your body is basically sliced open, and they're removing the organs and stitching you back, and so when you think about that in comparison to what she did, just being an organ donor, your body's going through a lot more, I guess you could say, incisions than what she did. But I'm not justifying what she did. I'm just making the point of, it's the norm is to do damage to the body, not out of disrespect, but as part of the process. It's just the protocol of what they do when a person's deceased, and then trying to figure out cause of death, or if it's part of a homicide investigation or something of that nature. But again, we'll continue.
we would have to wait until she's adjudicated to say definitively that she did it. But is this the mindset of most people when they think about child predators or sex offenders? They think they are the lowest of the low and no one would care what I would do to them.
I mean, mostly yes. I would say yes. For me, I would say that a lot of people would see a person and think of them as the lowest of the low, scum of the scum, because they've done some acts. But of course, just like we discussed earlier, he has paid his time, and he was adjudicated, and he died, and he was on the table, and he had no defense, and she took matters into her own hands and just decided to do what she did. And unfortunately, it's sad, and nobody knows what her motive is. Did we uncover some unresolved issues that happened to her in her past life?
That's what's going to be interesting to me, is what was the motivation, what prompted her to do this, and then try to cover up, because you knew what you were doing at that time, and you knew it was illegal, and you knew eventually this was going to resurface as well. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of answers yet to be taken.
If it were just a joke and her mindset, being funny, does it make it that much more egregious? If there is no motivation there, if there's no psychological damage from some victim she knows, or the victimization of herself?
To me, it's just so disturbing. It's a criminal offense. And if she is convicted of that, I think she has to pay the price for that. I don't think that, I know some people right now are like, yay, good for her, good for what she did. He's a sex offender, he deserves everything he get. But no, you can't You can't have it where people are taking revenge like that and mutilating body parts like that. That just sends out the wrong message to me.
I agree with him. It just sends the wrong message. I don't really have much to say on this other than what I said at the
With
very beginning.
Asana, AI teammates can.
I don't have a lot to say on this other than what I said in the beginning, is that, I appreciate, those that do those jobs that not everyone's just cut out for. It's, some may look at it as like an odd job or a strange job to embark on, but someone's got to do it. There's that saying, somebody's got to do it. And it's the truth, from the top paying jobs on down to the what you would consider the lowest job. Someone's got to do it. And being a mortician, I appreciate what you guys do. For those of you who are either in school to become a mortician or you're already a mortician, I appreciate what you do, because at the end of the day, you're needed, which is why the business, funeral home business, is a lucrative business, because death is guaranteed for everyone. And it's a business that's never gonna go out of business, right? But it's not just about the business, it's also about the work that they do, because again, they prepare the bodies to make it presentable for families to get their last viewing, which, it's not easy to do. In the past, again, with some of my previous jobs, I've walked in on funeral homes, working on a body, putting makeup on. And when I was younger, like I said before earlier, that type of stuff would have really bothered me. I wouldn't be able to watch something like that. But you appreciate what these people do to bring comfort to families, so they're needed. As a matter of fact, just a quick story. Back when I was in college, I remember in one of my classes, we were going around. We were in a circle. We were going around, and people were just speaking on what they plan to do when they finish college. And I remember my classmate, African American girl, she said, I plan to be a mortician. And I remember looking at her like, a mortician? And yeah, she said, a mortician. And I was like, what would make you decide to do that? I remember looking at her like she was strange. It was not, that wasn't the typical thing that you would hear people say they want to do. And I'm like, why and how did you know that was something you wanted to do? Because you basically be working with bodies. And I thought that was a little bit odd, but I respect it now. But I thought it was odd. And she said her exact words, and actually not her exact words, I'm paraphrasing because this was many years ago, but she said she likes the idea of being able to make families feel good in a time of basically great loss. And she likes the feeling of what I just mentioned, dressing up the bodies, preparing the bodies to make them look like they're at peace, depending on how bad the shape of the body, due to whether it's been like a car accident or if it was a murder. She said she enjoys the idea of bringing comfort to families. And when she put it like that, I was like, I respect that. And I'm not even going to say what my reply was, because I'm not putting that out in the universe. But I respect that. When she told me that, I respected what she said. And yeah, so in this situation for this episode, that woman, in my opinion, is a bit deranged for doing something like that, because she risked her license. I mean, you go to school for this. This is not something where you just similar to the episode I did on Anthony Mackie, talking about things are given to you, it's not earned. That profession, you earn it. You earn it. You gotta really you go to school for that, to become a mortician. And not, as I said before, not everybody can become a mortician. Not everybody wants to be a mortician, first of all. I get it. But the point I'm trying to make is she basically potentially threw her career away. She's most likely going to lose her license for doing something like that. But that's on her. She made the decision. But that's all I have on this. Lastly, again, if you feel like what she did wasn't wrong, or you think it's one and the same as the street justice that takes part in prison, by all means, go in the comments, and I'll see you in the comments as far as that's concerned. I don't think it's one and the same, because obviously street justice in jail, the person's alive, so they basically, giving them the beat down because of what they did as far as to children or to young girls and stuff like that. So it's different when the person's alive. When the person's already dead, I feel like it's over with. The pain and suffering that they cause is over with. So I don't see the need for them to be, their body to be damaged once they're already deceased. I don't see the point in that. So I don't see why she thought that was a good idea. But again, that's on her, and she's gonna have to deal with whatever the courts decide is right for her. But that's all I have today. As always, I appreciate everyone tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.